I stood near the far wall of the ballroom, clutching my small gift bag like it was a shield. 73 guests, all dressed like they belonged in a magazine-spread silk gowns, cufflinks, practiced laughter. The chandeliers caught every lie and made them sparkle. I wasn't supposed to be here. That thought looped in my mind as I watched my mother float from guest to guest like royalty. My father held court near the bar with a circle of men I recognized from base visits, military brass with permanent grins and expensive watches. And then there was Caleb, my brother, the golden child, decorated, beloved, effortlessly magnetic. He stood at the center of it all, basking in their praise like he hadn't ignored my calls for the last 3 months, like he hadn't left me off the seating chart entirely until someone must have reminded him that I existed when he finally noticed me. It wasn't a reunion, it was a performance. "Celine," he said, lifting his glass in mock surprise, his voice just loud enough to hush a few conversations nearby. "Didn't know they let freelancers in with the real professionals." A few polite chuckles. I smiled thinly, tucking my hair behind my ear. "Guess not everyone can serve their country," he added, sipping his drink. I tilted my head. "And not everyone has to be funded by someone else's trust fund to look impressive." It was subtle, almost too quiet, but it landed. The air changed. Caleb's smile faltered, and then he looked past me. I felt it before I saw it, my father's presence. Heavy, heated. His hand closed around my upper arm. "What did you just say?" he asked. "Low and dangerous." I opened my mouth, but I never got the chance to answer. The slap cracked across my cheek like a rifle shot. Conversations stopped. Forks paused midair. Then his hand tangled in my hair, yanking me backward so hard my scalp screamed. The room blurred as I stumbled, heels slipping against polished marble. He dragged me toward the doors like I was garbage. I gasped, but the breath caught behind pain. My hands reached for balance, for mercy, for anything. I heard it next, the sharp, high sound of my mother laughing, not out of shock, out of amusement, like this was theater. Then the applause. One person, Caleb. "You had it coming," he said, smiling as he clapped. Like he was proud. No one stopped him. Not one of the 73. Not one hand reached for mine. They watched. They whispered. But they let it happen. Outside, the air was cooler. The night too quiet. My father shoved me once more and let go. I stumbled forward, caught myself against a stone column, and straightened. My scalp burned. My lip bled. My chest ached not from injury, but from the shame that wouldn't stop blooming. I didn't look back. I walked toward the parking lot, my heels clicking against the concrete, each step heavier than the last, and my fingers already searching for my phone. I drove with one hand clenched around the steering wheel, the other gripping a wad of tissue pressed against my lip. Blood kept seeping through. The streetlights blurred past like witnesses too afraid to speak. My scalp pulsed where his fingers had torn through hair, and my cheek throbbed in rhythm with every heartbeat. But none of it was unfamiliar. This wasn't the first time, just the first time with an audience. I'd been shoved into walls before, called ungrateful, told I was lucky to be fed. My father had always known how to weaponize disappointment my mother, how to disguise cruelty as refinement. And Caleb. He made a career out of ignoring me until it was time to prove his worth by comparison. When I was 8, I brought home a drawing I was proud of. My mother told me not to pin it to the fridge, it would clutter the kitchen. When I was 16, I got accepted into an art program. My father asked if it was real school or just doodling with tuition. On my 25th birthday, I called Caleb. He didn't answer. Later, I saw photos of him celebrating at a rooftop bar with my parents. Tonight wasn't a betrayal. It was a summary. I pulled into my apartment lot, parked, and sat for a moment staring at the building. My hands were still shaking. My dress was torn at the shoulder, fabric ripped in the same spot he'd grabbed. I took a breath, then another. Inside. I flipped the bathroom light on and met myself in the mirror. Swollen lip, bruised cheek, tangled hair. My reflection looked back without flinching. "It ends tonight," I said aloud. I walked to the kitchen and pulled out my phone, scrolled past names I hadn't touched in years. Then I found it Dana Calder, back in school. She was the sharp one, studied contracts for fun, argued with professors, and won. I once lent her a textbook when she couldn't afford one. That was a long time ago. I hit call. The line rang twice. "Celine," she answered, groggy. "It's me. I need help." A pause. "Talk to me," she said. So I did. Dana met me at a quiet coffee shop off East Monroe the next morning. She didn't waste time with small talk, just pulled out a legal pad and waited. I told her everything. From the moment I walked into the ballroom to the second I slammed my car door shut and realized I couldn't keep pretending it was normal. I didn't soften it this time. I didn't try to protect them. And Dana. She never interrupted, never flinched, just listened. When I finished, she nodded once and said, "We document everything," by the time I left the cafe. I had a list of next steps and a folder in my bag labeled evidence. I didn't know what healing looked like, but this felt like a start. That afternoon, I knocked on the door 2 floors down. Rick Delano opened it, already half expecting me. "Thought I might see you," he said, stepping aside. Rick had been my landlord for 3 years, the kind of guy who remembered to salt the sidewalks before a freeze and never asked questions about noise unless it sounded like danger. He used to be a cop. Now he worked freelance security gigs and sometimes, quietly, found things people didn't want found. I handed him the slip of paper Dana had given me: names, dates, a bank account number I barely remembered. "If there's anything off," I said. "I need to know." Rick took it, eyes scanning the list. "Off, kid. I can already tell you none of this is clean." That night, I sat on my bed, lights off, folder in my lap, staring at the bruises on my arms in the glow of my phone screen. A message buzzed through from Dana. "Start saving everything. This won't stay private." I read it twice. Then I opened a new album in my phone and named it Proof. Rick knocked on my door 2 days later, holding a manila folder that looked heavier than paper should allow. "Got something," he said, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. I sat across from him at the kitchen table. He laid out the documents in quiet rows: bank statements, wire transfers, emails with clipped subjects like internal shift and fund transfer authorization. I didn't understand the numbers at first. Then I saw the account ID. It was mine. "Your father's name shows up here," Rick said, tapping the second page. "And again here, signing as trustee." The dates lined up with Caleb's promotion, with the new car my mother suddenly drove, with the pictures of golf outings I'd seen online, always tagged at the country club I never once stepped foot in. I picked up one document, a series of withdrawals over 3 years. The totals made my stomach twist. This was supposed to be mine. I said, my education, my future, used it to grease wheels. Rick muttered, "Promotion boards, donations to base foundations, even paid a publicist, all under your trust." He pulled out a printed email. The subject line read, "Ensure Caleb stands out." The body was short. His father was very persuasive. Dana arrived an hour later, skimming through the pages with silent intensity. "This isn't just misuse," she said. "It's fraud, maybe even laundering. We can go civil or criminal. Maybe both." I nodded slowly, but my hands were cold. The slap from my father had faded into a dull ache. But this was something else. They didn't just hurt me. They built everything they had from what was supposed to be mine. "I want it on the record," I said. Voice low. Dana didn't hesitate. "Then we start with exposure," and I knew exactly who to call next. The invitation came through a text from my mother. "Let's talk this through like family. Come by tomorrow at 3. No apology. No explanation. Just that familiar tone, soft enough to seem reasonable, sharp enough to cut if I didn't comply. Dana raised an eyebrow when I told her, "You're not going alone." But I needed to. I needed to see how far they were willing to go. Now that they knew I wasn't staying silent, their house looked the same. Too clean, too perfect. The lemon polish, the floral candles. I stepped inside, and time warped. The hallway still had that photo of Caleb at his first medal ceremony. I wasn't in any of the frames. My mother met me with a smile stretched thin. Pastel cardigan draped just right. "Celine," she said, as if saying my name gave her power over it. "Let's get to the heart of this." My father sat in the formal living room, a neat stack of papers on the coffee table. Caleb was there too, legs crossed, scrolling his phone like he didn't remember applauding while I bled. "We want to move forward," my mother said sweetly, quietly. My father added. He pushed the papers toward me. "An NDA, a waiver of legal claims, a check tucked inside, visible just enough to remind me what silence was worth to them." "That's your idea of resolving this?" I asked. "You've made your point," he said, voice hardening. "Let's not drag this out." I scanned the room, and that's when I saw it. A small black recorder, poorly hidden near the lamp base. I almost laughed. They wanted to buy me off and trap me at the same time. I stood up, placed the papers back on the table. "You think this is about money?" I said quietly. "It never was." My father's face darkened. "Don't play the victim." I leaned forward, meeting his glare. "I'm not playing anything. I came here to give you a chance. You had it. Now it's gone." My mother's breath caught. Caleb muttered something under his breath. I didn't stay to hear it. As I walked out, my fingers were already closing around my phone, and Jenna was already waiting for my call. I met Jenna at a small cafe near the courthouse neutral ground, quiet enough for what we were about to do. She looked different than I remembered from college, sharper, tired around the eyes, but still fast, still hungry. She slid into the seat across from me and took one look at the folder I'd brought. "This is everything she asked." I nodded. "Video, trust fund transfers. The rest is with Dana." She didn't ask why I was doing this. She knew. She flipped through the pages with practiced precision, her face unreadable. When she reached the part about Caleb's promotion being funded through my trust, she let out a low whistle. "They're not going to walk away from this," she said. That's the point. By the time I left the cafe, Dana had already released a legal statement formal, clear, cold as steel. The language cut straight through pattern of coercion, financial abuse, and physical assault. No embellishment, just facts. Jenna's article dropped 3 hours later. The headline was "Direct Local Businessman Caught on Camera. Assaulting Daughter Trust Fund Misuse." Alleged embedded at the top was the ballroom footage, my father's hand across my face, the drag by the hair, Caleb clapping, my mother smiling. Within minutes, it was everywhere. I didn't check the comments. I didn't have to. Dana called just before midnight. 3 clients have pulled out of your father's firm. Caleb's been placed on administrative leave. I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the ceiling, the house I grew up in, the family that built themselves on silence and image they were crumbling. And I hadn't even said a word publicly, yet. As I hung up, my phone buzzed again. A blocked number, just one line. "You think you've won." The lawsuit hit 2 days later. Dana forwarded the notice with a short message. "They're going for defamation. We expected this." Attached was their version of the ballroom video. Edited, cropped, muted in parts and looped in others. In this version, my father looked calm. My voice was raised. It made me look erratic, unhinged, dangerous. "They want to control the narrative," Donna said during our call. "They're betting public perception will turn before we can file our counter." And for some, it worked. The internet became a war zone. Messages flooded in some kind, some cruel, others just noise. I was called brave. I was called bitter. a truth teller, a liar, an attention seeker, a fraud. I stopped reading the comments after the third time someone said I was lucky he only hit me once. That night, I sat in the dark with my phone face down on the coffee table, trying not to listen to the echo of my mother's laugh. The sound had lived in my head for years, but now it had company my father's lawyer, their accusations, the endless edits cutting truth into fragments. The phone buzzed once, a blocked number. I turned it over. You don't know what's coming. I didn't flinch. I just stared at it until the screen dimmed. Dana called again the next morning, her tone clipped and focused. They've hired Marcus Layton. I blinked. The corporate fixer. He's the guy people call when they want a scandal buried before it hits the press. He's good. Celine. I leaned back against the kitchen counter. So we go louder. There was a pause. Then Dana said, Good, because the real fight starts now. And I was already reaching for the next piece of evidence. The courtroom was cold in a way that had nothing to do with temperature. My father sat at the plaintiff's table in a suit I knew cost more than my rent. Caleb beside him, pale and stiff. My mother didn't make eye contact. Dana stood like she'd been born for this. She opened with the bank records precise, undeniable, transfers from my trust into shell companies. Then came the promotional invoices tied to Caleb's career. Finally, the voice recordings Rick helped recover casual conversations between my father and colleagues, bragging about redirecting family assets. The opposing counsel tried to object, but Dana was surgical. Every fact had a backup. Every backup had a signature. When it was my turn, I stepped forward and raised my right hand. My voice didn't shake. I told them what I remembered, not just the slap, not just the dragging, but the years leading up to it, the insults in private, the erasure in public, the money I didn't know I lost until someone else cashed it in. They didn't just silence me. I said, they spent me. The judge listened carefully, and when it ended, he looked directly at my father and said, This court finds reasonable cause to open further investigation into possible criminal misuse of trust funds. Civil proceedings will be paused pending that review. Outside, the press had already gathered, flashes, microphones, voices calling my name. I stood there, not as their daughter, not as the girl dragged across marble tile, but as myself. This isn't revenge, I said. This is justice. And finally, I felt what it was like to mean every word I said. The full video went live 2 days later. No edits, no slow motion, no cuts to protect reputations. Just truth. My father's voice sharp, then rising, his hand across my face. The moment he grabbed my hair, my feet scraping against the floor, Caleb clapping in the background, my mother laughing like it was entertainment. It spread fast, faster than any press release, any article. It didn't need a caption. The silence of the room, the expressions of the guests, they said more than any headline could. By noon, Caleb issued a statement. He was resigning his post, citing mental health challenges and a desire to avoid distraction for his unit. By evening, 3 sponsors had cut ties with my father's firm. A 4th pulled out the next morning. His name was now listed in articles beside words like allegations, abuse, and investigation. I watched it all unfold from my apartment, coffee in hand, blanket draped over my shoulders like armor. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt still, not peaceful, not angry, just still, like something had finally stopped spinning. Later that night, I opened the top drawer of my dresser and reached into the back. The necklace lay tangled between receipts and rubber bands, the chain delicate, the clasp still bent from where my mother had ripped it from my neck the night of the party. I held it up to the light. The pendant wasn't worth much, just a small silver circle, etched with a wave pattern, a gift from someone who once told me I was stronger than I thought. I fastened it around my neck. It didn't feel like reclaiming the past. It felt like anchoring the present. And when I turned off the light and crawled into bed, I didn't think about what I'd lost. I thought about what I was finally building. The auditorium lights dimmed as I stepped onto the stage. Not a courtroom, not a press conference, just a room full of women and a few men who knew what it meant to be broken quietly. I hadn't planned to speak. I was just supposed to listen. But when they asked if I wanted the mic, my legs moved before I could second-guess them. I didn't tell them everything, just enough. I spoke about the moment I walked into a party and left with a bruised face and clarity, about the line between silence and surrender, about how one phone call didn't change my life, but what did was everything I chose after it. I used to think boundaries were walls. I said, now I know they're doors. You just have to be the one to lock them. Applause came gently, not the kind that demanded performance, but the kind that held space. Afterward, I made my way toward the exit. People stopped me, some to hug, some to whisper their own stories. I didn't need to say much. Most of them already knew what I meant. Outside, the air was cooler than I expected. I pulled my coat tighter around me and reached for my phone. A new message blinked on the screen. Unknown number. Thank you. Because of you. I left too. I stared at it for a long moment, and then I slipped the phone into my pocket and kept walking.